Okay, so today, just to start with, I've actually got two presentations to run through today. The first one I'm going to go through is looking back. It's a reflection on what we've achieved over the last year. So looking back we've actually released two releases since I think the last meetup. So at the last meetup we were talking about the pending 14.5 update, and since then we've also released the version 15 update as well. So just to look back at some of the major features that came out, and also some of the things that you might missed in the whole process of what's happened. The first one, obviously off the block, is tiles. We've been amazed at how popular and how successful this feature has been. It's used significantly throughout the system for a whole range of different uses, purposes, and examples. Also, over the last year, we've refined the process even further. So initially in 14.5, you may have found that it didn't quite do what you wanted it to do. But in version 15, we listened to all that feedback and we've improved it further. And now we think it's quite sophisticated. You should be able to achieve almost anything that you're looking to do with the tiles component. So for those that don't know what tiles are, it's basically just an image with text and a link. It's nothing complicated, but it's that visual way of communicating and navigating through the system that really brings the system to life. It makes it look far more engaging and interesting. And up here on the screen, I've got some examples of different ways that we've put them together. But I've seen thousands of examples across multiple schools about how great it looks when this system's being used properly. So I really do recommend everyone spend some time playing with this feature, using it, seeing how it goes. I can't recommend it enough. Next, I just want to talk about cloud storage. So obviously, last year, this time, cloud storage was a hot topic. We were having a lot of schools sign up into either Office 365 or Google Apps as their technology, or GAF, as it's called. And lots of schools were going down that road, and they were looking to integrate Schoolbox into that, environment. Today in Schoolbox, in version 15 that you're all running today, we have integration support for both Office 365 and Google. So both of those systems can be connected in to your Schoolbox as of today. Now, if you haven't already done that, get in touch with our support team and they can help you through the process. It is a bit involved, but it is possible that you can get those systems up and running. What that integration means for you is firstly that students can submit work directly from their cloud drive into Schoolbox. We've had a lot of problems with devices like iPads and other mobile devices that don't necessarily have a file system. What cloud storage gives you is a cloud file system that's always backed up, is always available, no matter what device the student is on. So if you've got students on BYOD, on iPads, all of those different devices, cloud storage provides you a method for moving files between those devices and Schoolbox. So it's quite a sophisticated way to deal with a big issue that many schools have currently, which is moving student work from one place to another. So I do recommend looking into cloud storage options and how you can integrate them. You'll also notice up on the screen there, I've got a picture of the Google Docs being integrated directly into Schoolbox. So that's actually something you can do now. It's not straightforward, but you can actually embed Google Docs directly into a Schoolbox page and make a fully editable, live, real-time document in Schoolbox. We've obviously seen the benefit of having something like that in Schoolbox, and so in the future, in the next few releases, we're going to make that as easy as possible so that you can just drop any Google document into any page in Schoolbox and make it as easy as possible for you to start collaborating. And the same goes for Office 365 as well. So managing the permissions and who can access that all automatically for you. Just in terms of the general Google versus Microsoft debate and whether you go for one or the other or both, in some cases many schools are on the fence with that one and go on both. We generally found that Google was probably a bit easier, a bit quicker to the mark with a lot of functionality, and the APIs were certainly easier to use and we were able to get Google up and running quicker. But Microsoft certainly turned the tables recently and they're catching up very quickly. And recent announcements around OneNote and other technologies in the Microsoft camp are certainly making that an attractive proposition. So I'm not going to promote one solution or the other, but I think that both of them have pros and cons, and both of them are very good. but certainly Microsoft's not the laggard that it once was in that marketplace, and now I'd consider both of them fairly even in that space. Just to talk quickly about the mobile strategy. Some of you may have already seen this in terms of the blog that we posted and about the partnership with Digistorm. With Schoolbox, what we've gone and done is that we decided quite a while back that we weren't mobile app developers, and many schools were asking us for an app, and we decided that we weren't app developers, and that wasn't a path that we were going to go down. As a result, we've gone out and looked for partners in industry that can help us fill that gap where schools require an app to be developed. They can engage a partner developer to get that app built. Now, Digistorm is our first partner off the rank, and they've got an app already up and running that you can purchase today that integrates with Schoolbox. We've built the technology underlying this that allows us to do things like push notifications, synchronize calendars, do work, and that's going to continue to expand and become a bigger part of our roadmap in the future as well. So we do see mobile as a key part of our strategy, and I'll thank St Kentigern on this one as well, because St Kentigern has been the pilot school with the Digistorm Schoolbox integration. They've been the first one off the rank, and they're up and running now with that integration. But certainly that is an option, and you can engage that app if you choose and have that service available for your parents or students to receive push notifications and other information directly in that app as well. Now, one of the things that we've been working on over the last few years is the big picture around curriculum mapping, courses, and how it all links together. So some of you, it might have seemed a bit opaque to everyone, so I thought I might take some time just to explain our big picture strategy on how this all fits together and what it all means. We see curriculum as obviously the starting point for the development of all the material in Schoolbox. You need good, solid curriculum before you can even begin the process of building your courses in Schoolbox. So the starting point is really that curriculum process. Now, for many of our clients, they were talking to us about custom building their own curriculum and how they manage that. Currently, it was in Word documents, spread out across network drives, owned by different people and managed in different places. And that wasn't really a solution that we could draw on. We couldn't take that information and make it available through Schoolbox and present it to the wider world. So we went out and looked for products on the market that could support you to start databasing your curriculum, managing that curriculum in a central location and making it available and making it transparent, and also reviewing it, of course, and looking at how it works and what your coverage is and where there's cross-disciplinary issues. So that's what we went out to look at, and we found Rubicon Atlas was something that many of our customers were already using. So we started working with them to build a relationship, to make that data accessible so that we could start accessing it and bringing it into Schoolbox. Obviously, they're still working on that API for us, so they're trying to make that information available for us currently. But behind the scenes, we've started work on building a curriculum mapping system already. So some of you may have seen we've got the initial minimum viable product, we call it, of a curriculum builder in Schoolbox, and that will eventually be populated from Atlas Rubicon and allow you to map your courses back to that curriculum. Now, the idea about mapping your courses back to your curriculum is so that we can track which assessments and which resources and material that exist within Schoolbox, how does that relate back to your curriculum? Is this particular video appropriate for Year 9 mathematics, or is it for Year 10 geography? Is this assessment marking these particular criteria in this particular section of the curriculum? They're the types of questions that we want to know the answers to, because we want to start looking at the insights and the intelligence behind how we're delivering the curriculum, how effectively we're delivering the curriculum, and whether we're actually achieving the curriculum. So they're the questions that we want to start answering for you. In order to do that, we need this, our course material linked back to that curriculum and have it all connected up so we can answer that question. Finally, when we get down to the classroom, and this is sort of the end place where everything really comes together at the end of the day in the classroom. And as as we were talking about before, the classroom is really key to us. It's really the critical point for us. We are classroom-centric. And so we want to be able to give teachers intelligence in real time in the classroom about how the students are progressing, what they've achieved, what they're doing, giving that information straight back to the teachers so they can actually make change in the classroom as they're going. So that's what we're really interested in. And from our perspective, the classroom is becoming more and more individualised. So we don't want to have an overriding course that's delivered, it's hard and fast like a tertiary system. We are interested in that classroom diversity, that I guess that every classroom's slightly different, and then taking that the next step further, and I'll talk about this in the future roadmap, the next step further will be individualising it even further down to the student. We're not quite there yet, but we're already at that level where we're individualising for the teacher in the classroom so they can deliver the content material back as they want to deliver, but it's still linking back to that original curriculum and that original course so you can still understand at a whole cohort level or even at a whole school level how you're achieving against the curriculum. Next, another big topic that we've been sort of doing a lot of work with and a lot of discussions with schools around is reporting. So reporting is a bit of I guess it's a complex term because it's an umbrella term for a large range of, I guess, information, and that causes some confusion when we have these discussions. So just to talk a bit about our perspective on reporting and how it all fits together in our big picture as well. Firstly, we see Schoolbox's focus on continuous reporting. That's really where we excel, in that idea that we're providing real-time feedback to parents, students, and staff about how the students are going in the classroom. That's really where we excel and where we see the future as well in reporting. That's really our focus, is making sure that we clearly communicate to the whole student body exactly how they're performing and what their performance is and what they need to do better, or what they have not done in other ways. So that's really our focus, is that idea of continuous reporting. We're never going to be involved in the so-called summative or formal reporting process. We're never going to be engaged in developing those. Having said that, we've looked to make our data available for teachers to use in reporting systems, and along that vein we developed a Markbook synchronization API that allows us to write back our Markbook data into third-party systems. Obviously Synergetic is the first cab off the rank on that one, and so if you have Synergetic you can have your Markbook data synchronized into Synergetic's Markbook today and have that data available for reporting purposes when you come to write your reports in Synergetic. So when you come to write those final formal summative reports, there's a lot of different strategies and ways that schools approach those reports. And those are changing and evolving as well. The most common strategy that we're seeing today is we're trying to, I guess, peel back some of the effort required from teachers so that because we understand and recognise that real-time data is probably more relevant than 6-month-old information, we're trying to peel back the amount of information that goes into those formal reports. So a lot of schools today are looking to put some major common assessment tasks into the reports and then having a summative comment delivered by the teacher. And that's pretty much, I guess, what goes into that final PDF report that gets printed out. Now there's lots of variations around that space and how it's delivered, but that's where we see it sort of sitting at the moment. So you get the real-time feed. So from a teacher's perspective, they're putting the mark data in real time into the Schoolbox Markbook. At the end of the semester, you take a snapshot of maybe 3 or 4 common assessments and write a summative comment, and that's your report. And I think that's a really simple way to achieve reporting. You're still getting the final report, you still get the paperwork and all of the rest, but you do get a much simpler, from a teacher's perspective, much easier system to approach. Finally, but did you know? So there's a few little bits and pieces that I think that people may have missed, that may not have got the spotlight or the headlights over the last few months. Firstly, animated GIFs. Did you know you can use animated GIFs anywhere now in Schoolbox? You can use them in tiles. You can use them in anywhere in your photo galleries, image galleries. Go nuts. Use animated GIFs. Once again, just like tiles, they really do make the page come alive. So get involved in using some animated GIFs to make your pages more interesting. You can do inline recording in Schoolbox. So what that means is you can actually press the record button in your browser and it will start creating an audio file. Now this happens all throughout Schoolbox. So whether you're submitting a file to your class page, you might want to take notes and just dictate them out and send that off to your class. You could also be just returning notes to a student submission. So if a student's handed work in and you just want to record some notes back to them, you can use the inline recorder for that as well. Just as a note, we know that this doesn't work on iPads, but with iPads you can actually work around that by using the inbuilt recording system in an iPad already. So we don't actually need this to work in an iPad because it's got a recording system built in the file upload system. Finally, customizable grades. Now, this has been a big thing for a lot of schools, but I think it's gone a bit unnoticed. Many schools were asking for us, but now when I go back and check, many schools aren't taking, I guess, best use of the customizable grade system. Customizable grades work in a couple of different ways. One, you can define your own grade scale systems, and lots of schools don't necessarily need to use A's, B's. You might be using competencies, satisfactories. You see my excellent there. You can do whatever you like with grading systems. So you don't necessarily need to use, your strict old scales. You can use more, I guess, encouraging terminology. You can use standard terminology that comes from standard assessment. All of those different things you can use and plug into the system. So feel free to get in there and make use of those and build as many as you want. And teachers can select from those as they need. The other part of customizable grades is that when you are marking an assessment, you may have noticed that there is the ability to say whether a student's absent, not submitted, submitted, or I can't remember the other one, but there's another one there. Those options there are now completely configurable. So you can actually build your own custom options that are available for every assessment. And the common support question we got about those was, how do I control the default marking system that provides? In the default system, an absent actually equals a 0 mark for that student. A not satisfactory also equals a 0 mark. Actually, I think an absent means a null, not submitted equals 0, and a not satisfactory equals a 0. So you can actually configure those marks and control what those actually relate to in terms of marked data. So be aware that you can go in and actually customize all of that marking system now in much greater detail than you could previously. So it's worth checking out and going through the admin system and just reviewing what's in there, how does it align with your policy, and whether you can make use of some of that new functionality that's in there that's come online over the last year. And that's it for my list of things to go through. Should I ask questions? Analytics? Go to questions. Does anyone have any questions that you want to yell out? Yep. Can you explain analytics? Thanks. Okay, so analytics really does come into, I guess, I am going to talk about this in my future roadmap a bit because there's a lot more that's coming on in the future. So in terms of what's available right now, in terms of analysis of Schoolbox and how it's functioning and how it's running in your school, right now you can access, many people don't know this, you can actually go to /statistics /awstats.pl, and that will give you full usage statistics on Schoolbox. So how many hits it's had, page views, all of that information is available there. If anyone wants that, I can tweet it a bit later to the Twitter feed. So just be aware that there's that. There is also, every homepage has its own statistics built into the system, and we're continuing to extend them. But there's far more announcements in my future roadmap that I'm going to hold back for my future roadmap about analytics. So we'll talk about that then. Any other questions? It's not going to work.
With the customizable grades, James, does that transfer to rubrics? Because we've noticed that we mark in ABCs generally, and so we
It is.
something we can customize?
Currently, no. As you mentioned, yep. So just so you're aware, the question was, with rubrics, we're currently marking rubrics with a grade letter scale, but it converts to a number because rubrics are currently set on a point scale based on the amount of criteria and the descriptors that you have in them. We are aware of, there's two issues there. One, you can define your letter grade scales in what we call a result set, which allows teachers to reuse those over and over again. So I would encourage you to use result sets in that context to set up letter grade scales to be reused on rubrics. In terms of the issue with the actual value of that data, we're aware of that, and we do have some stuff that we're coming out with in the future to deal with rubrics in general. And then I'll talk a bit more about rubrics in the future as well, in the future presentation.
Do you have any schools now where you're doing that summit, like doing the Markbook and then doing the summative report now? And is anybody planning on doing it very soon?
Yep, so the question was, do we have any schools currently using the synergetic Markbook integration to do reporting? The synergetic Markbook integration has been up and running now for, I think, about 4 or 5 months. So realistically, we haven't actually gone through a reporting cycle per se. But yeah, we do have schools preparing for that to be their reporting system for the end of this year. So that is definitely on the agenda. If you want, I can probably give you some names of some schools that might be leading the charge with that. Offline, obviously. Don't want to put anyone in the publicly. Any other questions? Yep.
Does there exist at the moment, or will there, you're talking about the result set, the ability for that to be in percentiles rather than actual absolute number of brackets?
Yep.
You know, like in one assessment, like an A might be 85%, another assessment, an A might be above 7%, thinking of relative grades within that cohort.
You're talking, so the question, I'll try and translate the question. So the question is, can you set the percentage for normalization on the grades? Is that correct?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can. So in the system, when you're defining your result sets and your customized grades, you'll find that there's both a lower bound and a normalized value. The lower bound is the point at which you become that grade, and the normalized value is the point at which we go from that grade back to. So just in terms of internally how things are working, every grade, and for teachers out there, you can block your ears now, every grade becomes a percentage internally in our system for transferring it between multiple systems. Specifically with the Markbook synchronization, we can't really synchronize all the different marking systems between all the different reporting systems. So what we do is we actually convert and normalize our mark data into a percentage and then transfer that percentage through to the third-party system. That percentage is completely controlled by you, so what that grade becomes in terms of a percentage, but also when we convert it back the other way, you can control what letter grades are displayed based on a range of percentages as well. Does that sort of answer the question?
I'm talking percentiles rather than percentages.
Oh, okay, yep. So this is an interesting topic because we're getting more into what would typically be called normalization of data. So where you adjust scales based on perhaps different marking of data across multiple classes. Generally, my opinion of that is that that's an issue that we need to solve to get good, accurate, continuous reporting. You can't have continuous reporting and also have to normalize your data. So you have to solve that problem before you present that data to students. So in terms of normalization, I know it was pretty common practice to happen in summative reports, that you would get a whole lot of grade data, you'd normalize it, and then that would be their final grade. And you can still do that type of work within Synergetic. So you can still take all of the raw Markbook data and then normalize that data in Synergetic and give them a final grade on their report. So that's all possible in Synergetic or in another reporting system, but that's not what we're really about. Taking a step back and looking at normalization as an issue as a whole, one of the problems with normalization is that it tends to mean that the mark data, when it's delivered to the student, is not accurate in the first place. The fact that it has to be modified and altered before it becomes a final mark is a suggestion that it's not being done correctly in the first place. So what we find is that the best way to work around that issue is actually not to allow teachers to use grading scales in general to mark with, because they're too, I guess, interpretive. They're sort of not really clear to a teacher what they should be giving. So instead we encourage the use of rubrics. So the use of rubrics really does mean that you get a lot of clarity around what a mark actually means, and it removes that need for normalization. Once you've got good, clear rubrics defined around your assessment tasks, the need for normalization goes away, and we can actually get much more accurate data delivered to the student in real time rather than having to wait for the report to come out and have the data normalized in sort of a few months' time. Does that answer the question? So yeah, I guess there's a trend for us to look at more use of rubrics for continuous reports because they fit nicely in that model. We also see a trend to get more standardized data into the system, so NAPLAN and other data sets. Those are also going to help explain what data in a real-time sense means, because if you've got mark points and things to map things against, it gets a lot clearer and much easier for people to interpret. It's a horrible experience if you're a parent and you log into the system and you see your students getting a B in one class and a C in another class, and the reality is that that C in that other class is really an A, but it doesn't really make sense. So you need to get rid of that, I guess, abstraction as early as possible to achieve good continuous reporting. Any other questions?
James, are you wanting to store the NAPLAN data inside Schoolbox, or is it going to sit outside?
Going on to my future roadmap a bit, but in general, I think that storing, I'm hoping the government will be delivering an electronic version of that data via an API that we'll be able to request. And ultimately, I think that we'll be downloading that and storing it within Schoolbox, but via the government API, so a direct feed. So that's our sort of future direction for that. For lots of schools, just on that, lots of schools at the moment are talking to us about customized reports, continuous reports, where we do mesh up lots of different data sources. So we're bringing in standardized data testing, we're bringing in Schoolbox formative data, we're bringing in a whole lot of different data into a unique report that schools are building. So we're learning from those examples and we're trying to distill those ideas back into the core Schoolbox product for everyone to benefit from. How am I going for time, Sean? 5 minutes? Okay, one more question. I am. I'll talk a bit more about that in the future, though. Sorry, I'm having to push all my future stuff because I do have slides on a lot of this stuff for the future. So I'll talk a lot about what we're planning to do in the next session. I've got another 45 minutes after lunch, I think, to talk about the future. So we'll cover a lot of that stuff then. Any questions about what we've currently got and what we're currently working on? Okay, great question. So just to repeat the question, the question was that teachers are building all these great tiles on their class pages, but they're concerned at the end of the year that the tiles are just going to vanish as the pages get archived. So that's actually can be solved, and it can be solved by building your tiles not in your classroom page, but actually in your course area. So what we typically recommend is that rather than build those tiles directly into your class, you go into your course page, and it might be your Year 9 French page, as Anna's example shows. Your Year 9 French page can have your tiles on it for all the different units or for whatever you want those tiles to represent. Then when you get to your class page, all you need to do is link to those tiles. So rather than building them on your class page, you just select, I want to use the Year 9 French course tiles, and they will be drawn into your class page. So then they'll be centrally managed in the course area, and they'll be available on your class page without having to, rebuild them. The other nice thing about that is that if a teacher's doing the same class multiple times, they can just drop the tiles onto 3 or 4 different class pages, all with one click. So it's quite simple to share those across multiple pages. But the key part is where you locate them in the first place. Locating them in the course area rather than locating them on the class page is the key step.